The Democratic Alliance has approached the court over the Lady R matter. The party says it was unconstitutional for President Cyril Ramaphosa to appoint a judge to investigate the docking of the Russian cargo ship in Simonstown in December. For more on this, we're now joined by legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala. Mpumelelo, good morning. Thank you very much for your time. Now, this one is a very interesting case. So the DA is arguing that certain executive functions are incompatible with judicial office. It's as though, from what I'm getting, they're saying it was an executive's investigation, but the presidency decided to clothe it with the legitimacy that comes with a judge. What do you make of this application?
I wouldn't agree with them. Maybe let's first look at the powers of the president. If you look at the Constitution, Section 84, 85, and 92, especially Statute 92, that of accountability, the president is obligated to say, if there's a problem that has occurred, let me go and be able to investigate it. Now, if I take a retired judge, they are permissible to sit on investigations such as these ones, although it's not desirable because due to the status that may be there. However, once the judge is retired, if the matter goes and review to set aside, it's not going to be something which is abnormal. Judges' judgments are set aside on a regular basis, and nothing's frowned upon pertaining to the particular point. And if you look at the intricacy of this particular matter, if you look at the intelligence that was involved and the delicacy in terms of making sure that the diplomatic relations which are being saved, I would support the president in terms of saying you needed to have someone who is going to be credible, someone who knows what they are doing, someone who has done the process of adjudicating on a regular basis and even on a higher scale. Yes, they may be supported by senior counsel and advocates, but at the end of the day, let's have someone who's going to fully understand where we are pertaining to this matter. And I think the president was quite correct. In terms of the law, there's nothing which prevents the president from appointing a retired judge to do these kinds of investigations.
Because they also highlight the fact that, according to them, this would be termed as a sort of a secret investigation where you would have the judge then confidentially reporting to the executive. They feel that this shouldn't be allowed to happen.
But it must be understood in the context in the information it is shared. The information was not shared within a court of law in which that particular information would then be public. There are ways and means of getting hold of that by applying for the Promotion of Access to Information Act. So if you make that application and say to the president, Mr. President, we want to have a full record of what has been taking place. Please provide us with that full record before we decide whether we are going to take the matter on review or not. I think that would have been a much better stance than trying to attack it from this point of view, saying that you shouldn't have appointed a judge in the first place. Judges, retired judges are appointed on a regular basis, especially retired judges, because they are the ones in which we then say, let's tap into the knowledge in which you've been able to develop over the years, and you're going to come up with an investigation which is going to be plausible. If anyone is unhappy, then take it on review if you so wish. The ways and processes of doing that is then to say, let me apply for the information to be shared to me. Once I've received that information, that I can be able to nitpick it and then say, this was done correctly, this was done wrong, the assessment was done correctly or wrong. Let me go to court to set it aside. But to set it aside on this basis alone, I do not think that there are many prospects of success.
But couldn't it be seen that perhaps here they preempted that the office would reject this application because we were essentially given an executive summary because they felt it was too sensitive? So we were never going to get the full report in this respect. So perhaps they preempted that rejection and decided to go the court route. And they've also explained at length that here it's not to set aside the outcomes of the report, but to rather get that declaratory order that perhaps this appointment was inconsistent with the Constitution. And they even stress that they don't believe that the two, being the president or Judge Mjapile, sought to cover up whatever was happening with Lady R. They believe they were probably also not aware what the law provides for.
And then the most important question would be, why engage in the whole process if we're not attacking the merits of the report, which is the most important matter? Without the report of what was asked to be investigated at that time, then it's simply a moot question, so to say, or a matter for jurisprudence that can be decided at a later stage. And it's one of the points in which also the presidency can come back and say, why are you fighting this particular matter if you're not fighting the merits of the matter? If the problem is that I've appointed a retired judge, then let's look at the law and what the law actually says. Let's start within the Constitution. I have an obligation as per Section 84, 85, and 92 as the president to make sure that all functions of any department which are under my control are functioning better. In instances where I feel that the investigation that ought to be done by someone who's more senior, I do have a prerogative of doing that. If you look at the provisions which are available, for example, in the Judicial Services Act, then there's nothing that prevents me from appointing a judge. Judges are prevented from acting in all other instances, maybe going back to practice, being an advocate and all of that. But when it comes to doing investigations such as these ones, there's nothing that precludes those judges from engaging in this type of activity. So the question would be, what wrong have I done as the president in making this appointment, especially when I've explained the importance and the sensitive nature of the matters which are being investigated.
But what if they said this matter is academic, which is what they're really stressing, that here they're seeking to develop the law?
And then the question would be, why waste the court's time in terms of developing academic matters that can be later argued in other matters where they could be embedded in? At the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with appointing a retired judge to chair an inquiry or an investigation of this particular nature. There's nothing that needs to be developed. That would be the basis of the president in terms of saying, why engage and labor our courts with such matters which are like this, which are basically moot, which are basically matters for jurisprudence that can be argued at a later stage.
Judging from everything you're saying, there clearly are no prospects of success for the Democratic Alliance, according to you.
They are very limited. If you are going to admit and say, I'm not, when it comes to the merits of the matter, so I'm not saying that the investigation which was done by the judge is incorrect, then the question would be, why are you fighting the very hand or the very process that enabled you to accept the findings as they are? It simply means that the thinking of the president is correct in this case. Taking a retired judge to conduct this type of investigation is what has delivered the results which are accepted by you and me and also the Democratic Alliance. So if you are going to find a method or a system that works, why deviate from that particular system when even on a jurisprudence type of or argument, judges are allowed to engage in similar practices such as these ones? The law is very clear as to what the judges can and cannot do. And in this particular instance, the president was simply saying, I want this matter to be handled by someone who's going to treat it in the important manner as it is now, make sure that the confidentiality of it is protected in the manner in which I feel that it must be protected in such. But most importantly, I want someone who's experienced, and who better to do it than a retired judge.